guys, it's Sam, and today I'm going to talk about some books that are very hyped or highly anticipated on BookTube, and if I plan on reading them or buying them. So this is a video that I did last summer, and I was recently reminded of it because YouTube put it in my recommend section, which is really weird when YouTube recommends my own videos to me, but whatever. I did it last year specifically because there were so many big books coming out. The new Suzanne Collins, the new Stephanie Meyer, all of that. But I do think it's kind of fun to get a temperature of what BookTube is really hyping up right now and letting you guys know kind of in bulk some of these books if I will read them or not, because I do get questions about certain books a lot. So I feel like with these very hyped books, this will answer a lot of your questions and let you know and get excited about some of these books that I might be reading and you might get my opinions on and things like that. So let's get into it. I did ask you guys on Twitter what you thought the most anticipated or most hyped books were right now, and more, I went with the books that are like really popular right now. So of course there are books mentioned that are like have been popular for some time, but more new things is what I went for here. And there were a lot of repeats in this list too, which made me know that there's a lot of them that people are talking about, and there really weren't any on here that I hadn't already heard about either. So that's a good indicator. Let's get into it. First is Lore by Alexandra Bracken. I obviously have answered this question. This is a book that I will be reading. This is our House Salt Book Club pick for this month. So at the end of this month, there will be a live show. We'll be talking about it and I'll do a review on it and everything. And I did get an edition from Owl Crate. It was in last month's Owl Crate box, so this is one that I will be reading. It follows Greek gods. Well, Greek gods are getting reincarnated every like 9 years or so, and then are getting hunted by a certain bloodline of a family, something like that. It's kind of vague because I'm not super looking into the synopsis of this book because I have traditionally not liked Alexandra Bracken, but this is a book that I do think I could potentially like. I'm hoping it sort of goes the same way as The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue went when I last did this video. I said very similar things about how like I don't tend to jive with V.E. Schwab's books, I don't tend to jive with Alexandra Bracken's books, but the synopsis fits so well for things that I like that I was hoping to like it, and I did for The Invisible Life. I loved it. So I'm hoping that happens with this too. But you'll be getting my opinions about this very shortly, like next month. So watch for that. The next is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. Again, answering my own question, will I read it, will I buy it? This was also set in Owl Crate 2 months ago, and I will be reading this because this hits every single note for me. So this is a YA, I think like technically fantasy, but I'm not actually sure if it's fantasy or not. But it's a Romeo and Juliet set in Shanghai in the 1920s. That's... yes, that's all. I don't need to know anything else. I will absolutely be reading this, hopefully next month. I have so many books that I like really want to get to soon that it's hard to know when they'll end up getting read, but I'm hoping to read this sooner rather than later. Then we have the From Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This has been kind of popular for a little bit. I know it's especially popular on Book Talk, which is Book TikTok. So this is one that I don't think that I'll love. However, I do plan on reading it at some point, possibly for like a video that a lot of people have been doing. I think we all got the idea about, and around the same time, about like reading really hyped TikTok books or things like that. I might do something like that, but, or even just like about really hyped romance books. But this is like a fantasy romance series. A lot of people are really into it. I don't know if it's going to hit for me because it seems like a lot of fans of like the Sarah J. Maas books and things are really liking this. I've read some of Jennifer L. Armentrout before and like haven't loved her stuff, but it can also be kind of cotton candy. So this is available at my library, so I plan on getting it from my library at some point. Then we have Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. I have talked about this as far as like in my most anticipated for the year video, but this is a book that I will read because it is the second book in the Nikolai duology, like the King of Scars duology. And I will read it and I will buy it, but I'm ambivalent about it. As I've mentioned, I did not love King of Scars. It was not my favorite. It's my least favorite in all of the Grisha books thus far, and I don't know about this. I don't know how this is gonna go. I mean, I'm gonna read it. I'm going to, but I'm very cautious about it. And the only reason I'm really buying it is because like I have the whole collection of Grisha books. I don't tend to be that person, but like you guys know I love Leigh Bardugo, I love the Grisha series, and like these installments have just been weak for me. But I'm still gonna get this. But I don't know how it's gonna go. I hope that it ends up really working for me because I'm gonna go in with such low expectations. But we'll see. Then we have the Gilded Ones by Namina Forna, and this is one I recently started hearing about actually because on my last book haul, people were talking about that this might be the book for Owl Crate for this month, so who knows, I haven't gotten that yet. But this looks like a Chosen One story, and in this world, it's like a fantasy world, everyone has to get like a blood test. It seems like it's inspired by African folklore and mythology a little bit, or like African society, but I don't know what part of Africa, which is why I'm just saying African. I'm not that ignorant. I know there's multiple different parts of Africa, but the synopsis didn't say if it's like West African, North African, like it didn't say. So I don't know that yet. But the characters at a certain age have to get like a blood test, and if their blood is red, like they're fine, they're accepted into the village. If it's gold, they're usually killed because it means that they're like sinful, I think, or something, like their blood's like tainted. So obviously our main character like ends up having golden blood, but she gets approached right after the ceremony by a woman that's like, hey, do you want to actually like fight for like the people, because you end up having like powers and stuff. So it's a chosen one narrative that we're very used to seeing. However, it's taking place in a world that is very different from what we're seeing. This has comps to like Black Panther and things like that. So I'm very intrigued about this, and I will hopefully get it in the Owl Crate box and be reading it. Then we have Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Last Hours. The first book was one of the books that we read last year for the House Salt Book Club, the first book in the series. I will read this. I will buy this. I mean, like, I don't need to buy it, but I probably will because I already own the first book, and the covers are like fairly pretty. But I've talked about before, I don't love Cassandra Clare. These are not my favorite books, and I have not read any of the modern Mortal Instruments books. I've only read The Infernal Devices and not The Last Hours, since The Last Hours takes place after The Infernal Devices. So there's overlap there. But this is just kind of like, again, cotton candy. Everyone is like a CW TV show. They're all hot. They're all dating each other. There's a lot of people in it, there's a lot of characters, and there's just a lot going on. So yeah, I do like this series for what it is, and I will likely be buying it and reading it. Kayla from Bookadoodles and I'll probably buddy read it because we're both reading it. Maybe Paige will join too. I feel like she likes it too. Who knows? Then we have the book I'm probably the most torn about on this list, and that is The Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. This is the first book in a new like dark fantasy series. It's obviously following vampires, and there's like all these different words in the synopsis as far as like how the world building is going to go, but it sounds like there's a hunt for a holy grail, humans have been driven into like almost extinction by the vampires, all this stuff. So very much my thing. However, there's been a lot of discussion about Jay Kristoff lately, especially his anti-native sentiments, and I've seen like really conflicting stuff about this from indigenous peoples. I know that there's been some stuff with his first series that was Japanese inspired, I want to say. I didn't read that one, where he got some of the rep wrong there. A lot of people have said that the rep for the Dwermi, I forget what their name, that's pronounced, what their names were, in the Nevernight series was poor. Because it was based off of Maori people. But then I read that series, and obviously I'm not Maori, so I can't completely, you know, testify to this or anything, but I have seen Maori people who've been like, the rep is fine, because it's not like those people were shown to be like the bad people in that world or anything like that, that originally some of those complaints were about, because that came out after the first book. So there's been like a lot of stuff there. He's apparently done some like problematic stuff because he's a problematic white man. So I wanted to talk about this sort of on this platform because I am conflicted about this, mostly because there's been conflicting pieces from people who have the authority to say how the rep is, you know, so that leaves it hard for me to decide what I want to do. I don't want to give my attention to an author who is all out shitty, but I think, as we talked about before, there's way more gray area here than a lot of people are willing to necessarily give these situations, especially in a case where it's not like everybody is saying this book is, you know, this representation is shit, he's been shit, blah, blah, blah. It's been much more murky than that. So I don't know. I don't think I'm going to rush out and read this necessarily right away. I think what might happen is I will wait for reviews to come out, particularly from BIPOC people, because I don't know what representation he's going to have in here for any kind of like people of color or indigenous people. So if he does have that representation in here, I want to see it from those reviewers first before I decide if I'm going to read this book. It's kind of what I've landed on. Because there's been so much like mixed opinions, I'm just not sure. It does break my heart a bit because this does appeal to me just on a synopsis level, and I'm not somebody that tends to pay a lot of attention to what authors do, so I didn't even really know about this until more recently. But still, I'm not going to be somebody that's going to contribute to an author doing that and being just really shitty. So I'm going to wait a little bit on this one and see. And I waited on Nevernight and it was fine. Like, I read Nevernight very late in the game, I feel like, so I'm okay with this. But yeah, we will see. This is going to probably get some early reviews and stuff too, so it's not like I'm going to have to wait very long if I do end up deciding to read it, because I'm sure we'll get some early reviews. Next is The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This has been around for like the last year or so, I want to say. A lot of people are talking about it, and this is a book that I do plan on buying and reading. This is eventually going to be a House Salt Book Club pick. I forget for what month. possibly next month, I don't remember, but we're gonna eventually be reading this for House Alt Book Club, and I've heard really delightful things about this. This is just so magical and cute and wonderful, and is an adult book and is a standalone, and I don't really know a lot about it besides just being like sort of like a House of Misfits kind of thing, which I dig that. So we'll see, but this is one that I do plan on reading and buying. And lastly, we have A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. This is the next book in the ACOTAR series, mostly following Cassian and Nesta from the series, it seems like. And this is one that I've talked about and most anticipated, and I do plan on reading it because I do like the ACOTAR series in general. You know, like I love ACOMAF, I hated ACOTAR, I was mad about ACOWAR, like whatever. I haven't read Frost and Starlight. Like I'm all over the place with this series, but I've kind of committed to it, and I do like their dynamic, so I do plan on reading it, but I hate this cover. I hate that they've decided to change the covers. Like, why would you do that? They were beautiful before. Ugh. So don't love the cover, and I'm not sure how this is gonna go, so I think this might be like a library or like an ebook. I might cave maybe and get the cover, but I don't like it, and it's not gonna look good with like the rest of the books. So yeah, I'm not stoked about this, but I will read this at some point in some way, in some form. So that is it for some of the most anticipated and hyped books on BookTube right now. Comment below and let me know your thoughts on some of these books, if you plan on reading them, if you have read them since some of them are out. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!